today. I want to return to the book of Isaiah. About once a month, I don't quite get that often, but I'm trying to preach through that book. The prophets of the Old Testament, a lot of times are some of the last things that we get to study. It's difficult. The prophets is difficult. And if you have a good background, what the Bible teaches anyway, then you come to the prophets, it gives you a lot of guidance and help getting through there. Babylon is fallen. Isaiah 47. That's what this is about. It's Isaiah letting the children of Israel know there'll be a time when Babylon is going to fall. They'll be taken captive by them. They'll be oppressed by them 70 years. But Babylon is going to fall. Now here's what I'll do in this lesson. Here's kind of the outline of where we're going. We're not going to start in Isaiah 47. Those words, Babylon is fallen of fallen. Babylon the Great is fallen and fallen. That's in the book of Revelation. And I want to look at Revelation 17 and 18. And then we'll go to Isaiah 47. And then we're going to talk about when it did fall in Daniel 5. And then I think there's a lesson there for us about some of the things that are said that we're going to find in Luke chapter 12. So that's where we're going, these four places. Let's start in the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 17. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I'll show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth on many waters, with whom kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now that's the beast, 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. Now I want you to note this. Having a golden cup in her hand. Now watch that as we go through this. It's full of abominations and filthiness of fornication. And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Now that doesn't mean a positive thing, that word admiration. That's a great wonder to see this. Now she doesn't last long. That's in Revelation chapter 17. The next chapter, Revelation 18. After these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Now, I'm just kind of going to skip through some things here, just get some high points between verses 7 and 17. How much she glorified herself and lived deliciously. For she said in her heart, now note these words, we're going to find this again. I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. And therefore shall come upon her plagues in one day. Note how sudden it comes. One day. And then kings of the earth, they're going to be standing afar off for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, that great city of Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour, look how suddenly, in 1 hour is thy judgment come. For in 1 hour, so great riches come to naught. And every shipmaster, and all the company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by the sea, stood afar off. Babylon's going to fall. And the kings and the merchants, they're just going to stand back and offer her no help, no assistance. What is John talking about? Well, it's not easy to decipher. He really doesn't go in and explain all of this, and so we've got to think about several things and pull it together. There's this part of Revelation begins with a great red dragon. What is a great red dragon? Well, that's going to be identified as Satan, the great red dragon. But then you're going to have the beast and the false prophet. The beast coming out of the sea, the false prophet, another beast, looks like a lamb, see? Like a lamb in sheep's clothing, what it is. It looks like a lamb, but it's a false prophet. And then you have this Babylon the Great, this woman. But the woman's going to fall. And the beast and false prophet, they're going to be cast into the lake that burns with fire and brimstone. And the great red dragon's going to be chained. And he'll wind up in the lake of fire and brimstone. He'll be thrown in a bottomless pit and chained. What is John talking about? Well, it's going to be hard for us to, with a lot of confidence, identify everything in the book of Revelation. Said, now here's what this is. And people try that, and they offer some good suggestions. John said these things would shortly come to pass. Here's what we know. That early church went through some great trials. There were great forces aligned to try to bring that church down, but it triumphed in the end. And all those evil forces that were aligned against that early church, they're the ones that were destroyed, not the church. Babylon is a code name. It's not the ancient city of Babylon. That's been long gone. It'll never be inhabited. But there's a code name. A lot of commentators will tell you, and they make a good argument for that, it's talking about Rome, a code name for the city of Rome. Now some will suggest, well, maybe not Rome. Maybe it's a code name for Jerusalem. Talking about that is Babylon. And you read that, and they make some arguments on that as well. You don't have to nail that down and know exactly. I've got my own ideas about that. But whatever it is, it's not going to last. It's going to be brought down. The kingdom of heaven's going to continue in spite of all of this. Revelation can be so difficult. It's called apocalyptic literature. What that means is we think apocalypse. Well, everything's being destroyed. That's not what apocalypse means. Apocalypse means it's revealed. The book of Revelation, it's the apocalypse. That's what, it's a revelation. But it's revealed in signs and symbols so that you don't really know what it is unless someone can interpret those for you. And in the New Testament church, they had those with the gift of the Spirit that could interpret. And so the ones that needed to know exactly what all this was, they knew. We can draw spiritual lessons from this, even though we may not know what everything in the book is referring to. But one thing that helps in Revelation, and that is if you have a knowledge of the Old Testament. So much of the imagery in there is drawn from Old Testament things, and a lot of it from the prophets. And some of this about Babylon is drawn from Isaiah chapter 47. So let's go through that chapter. You're going to recognize some things. Now this is real Babylon. And Isaiah is telling the children of Israel, Babylon is going to fall. And notice how he describes this to them. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. That's the inhabitants there. Sit on the ground. There's no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. He's going to depict Babylon as a great woman that she thinks she's got it made. She has nothing to worry about. Her life is tender and delicate. But watch what happens. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks. Make bare the legs. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance. I will not meet thee as a man. I'm coming to use God, not like a man. She's going to be reduced to a slave girl. Watch. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit thou silent, and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of the Kingdoms. That's who Babylon thought she was. I'm the Lady of the Kingdoms. It's not going to happen to me. I was wroth with my people. I polluted my inheritance and given them into thy hand. God used Babylon to punish his people for their wickedness. But Babylon went too far. It says, thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient thou hast heavily laid thy yoke. And thou hast said, I'll be a lady forever. See there? I'll be a lady forever. So thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither did thou remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this. Thou that art given to pleasures and dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thy heart, I am and none else besides me. Boy, don't people act like that. I know. They think life is all about themselves. Who is number one? You've heard that expression. Look out for number one. Well, that's usually in the context of you look out after yourself. You be your number one. Me and no one else. God's number one. You better look out for God first. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness. And the very idea of love is looking after another, placing another greater than yourselves. But Babylon, oh, she says this, I am and none else besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. Verse 9. But these two things shall come upon thee in a moment, in one day. See how suddenly it comes? In one day. The loss of children and widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries and the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Yet people can go out and commit evil. Say, nobody will know. Nobody sees this. I tell you, God sees it, doesn't he? God sees it. She said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and none else besides me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly. See that word suddenly? Which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thy enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth, if so thou shalt be able to profit, if so thou mayest prevail. Now bring out your enchantments, Babylon. Now let's see your sorceries. Let's just see how good this stuff is. And notice verse 13. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. I want you to note those. We're going to talk about them in just a minute. Behold, they shall be as stubble and fire, and shall burn them. Thou shalt not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor a fire to sit before it. And then verse 15. Thus shall they be to thee for whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. Remember in Revelation 18, the kings and the merchants, they all abandon her, they leave her. That's what's happening here. They're not going to save her. They're going to back off when they see what happens to Babylon. Let me show you what happened. I mean, what Isaiah said. It's in Daniel chapter 5. The king is Belshazzar. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to thousands of his lord and drank wine before thousands. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded, you remember the gold cup? Bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem. He's drinking out of the gold cup taken from the temple. It says that the king and his princes, his wives and concubines might drink therein. In the same hour came forth 4 fingers of a man's hand and rode over against the candlestick upon the baluster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part that the hand wrote. What if you just saw a hand all of a sudden show up and start writing on that wall? Write some strange words on the wall. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees smote one against the other. Now I'm going to skip some things. So I'm running through this chapter. Let me hit some high points. The king cried, bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. Isn't that what Isaiah said they'd do? Where's now your enchantments? Where's your astrologers, your monthly prognostic? Bring them in. See what they can do for you. That's what Belshazzar did. Bring them in. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing nor make known the king the interpretation thereof. Go get Daniel. Then was Daniel brought before the king. Verse 17, Daniel 5, Daniel answered and said before the king, I'll read the writing unto the king and make known the interpretation. And he said this, O Belshazzar, you've not humbled your heart at your trouble. He says, you're like your dad Nebuchadnezzar. You remember he didn't humble his heart? You didn't humble your heart, Belshazzar. You've lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven. And this is the writing which was written. Mene, tekel, upharsin. I've read that was ancient money. You might say it this way. A nickel, a dime, and a quarter. What does that mean? Why are those words up on the wall? A nickel, a dime, and a quarter. What are they? What does this mean? Well, now those words are similar to other words. Daniel explains it though. This is the interpretation of the thing, meaning God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. It says, tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. And then he says in verse 30 and 31, in that night. See how suddenly? That day, that hour, suddenly, that night, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede took the kingdom. Well, that's what Isaiah said would happen. You go over to Daniel 5, you see that's what happened. You go to Revelation 17 and 18 and all these strange things that we just read. It wouldn't be so strange if they listened to the prophets. They would sound familiar. It doesn't mean the exact thing is going to take place, but something like that's going to happen. That's why that language is used. But can we learn anything from all of this? 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 12. Let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. We don't need to get puffed up. We don't need to get proud. It'll never happen to me. I'll never see widowhood. I'll never have the sorrow of losing children. It's not going to happen to me. It's just as though as soon as they said it won't happen to me, then it happened. It happened. How many people do that? Oh, that's not going to happen to me. Oh, I see other people that happens to them. It won't happen to me. I can drink this stuff. It won't bother me. I'll be able to take it. I can go and see these awful things. It's not going to bother me. I can live there. Nobody's going to see. I'm not going to have to bear the consequences of this. It's not going to happen to me. You better take heed. If you think you stand, you be careful. Take heed lest you fall. And so the reading before Sunday school class. Let's go to Luke chapter 12. He spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. He thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. He said, this will I do. I'll pull down my barns and build greater. There will I bestow my fruits and my goods. And I'll say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, thou fool, this night, that's how suddenly it can happen. This night shall thy soul be required of thee. He had no idea it happened that night. This man had no thoughts of eternity. This man had thoughts of this life and how I'll live here. I'll have my ease. It's not going to happen to me. I'll never see the widowhood. I'll never suffer this sorrow and this loss. This night shall thy soul be required of thee. Then who shall these things be? It's not a condemnation of being rich. I should have put the verse 21 up there. It talks about so is a man not rich toward God. We put all our stock and riches and material, earthly things, you're going to lose it. It's gone. You need to be rich toward God. And we delay. Oh, I'll have time. It won't happen to me. We're about to sing a song. And you need to think in your heart and consider with fear. I'm resolved no longer to linger. Don't think it won't happen to you. It can happen this night. So let's make sure we're prepared to meet our God. Let's don't lift ourselves up against the Lord and think haughtily. Let's be humble. And let's be ready. Because a day will come. Our Babylon will fall. And we want to be ready to meet the Lord. Let's sing that invitation song.